Hello friends, welcome to the MARE Podcast. Before we get started, you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Don't forget that you can find more about the MARE project at www.marehamburg.com, and you can support the project and this podcast through Patreon. All the links are in the description. Enjoy! Excellent. Welcome to another episode of the MARE Podcast. I have Nikos today with me. Hello, Nikos.
Hey, happy to be here.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm happy to have you. And you are there is a pattern in this podcast that when the episode starts, we talk about MARE, and you are the newer committee member of MARE, right?
I am. Yeah, I am. I run in the organization along with you and rest of the fine gentlemen and over there.
Of course.
Gentlemen and ladies, yeah.
And ladies, of course. So what made you join MARE? Why MARE? How did you find MARE?
Well, it was through a friend of mine. So I go to the University of Malta, right? And one of my colleagues, Rebecca Sherry, did a presentation through us. And that was the first one that I saw. And I really, really liked the goal of the platform. I think that science communication is extremely important, and science communication for people just getting into the field is extremely important. And so, that's how I found MARE. I attended a few more lectures, and then there was the call for new committee members. I just responded to that.
All right, excellent. So you said that information about newer members is important. So what part of your life are you right now? You're doing your master's, right?
I am doing my master's, yes.
In the University of Malta. So what kind of master's? Is it a 2 year, 1 year? Do you have a thesis? Do you not have a thesis? How is it?
So the program is 1 year, ostensibly. I think most of my colleagues have taken more than 1 year to finish their program because it does have a thesis. So there is a top portion and a thesis portion. The first 2 semesters is class. You have 3 to 4 classes during that period. And then over the summer, there's an excavation. And then you start working on your thesis.
So there's an excavation involved.
There is, yeah.
And where is that excavation? Is it you all need to go, I imagine. This is part of your degree.
It's part of the degree. It's paid for in the tuition, which is really nice. It's one of the reasons why I selected the program. It's actually the principal reason why I selected the program, because I had no archaeological or very little archaeological experience before I started. So, it's in Malta. It's in a harbor on the northern part of the country called Salina Bay. It's a really fascinating place archaeologically. We can get into that if you want, but so it takes place over a month. You get a ton of underwater excavation experience. It's a really fantastic experience. I've done 2 excavation seasons there now.
Oh, 2 excavation seasons. So you've been twice. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind is it? What's the date of it? Is it classical, Roman? Is it before, after? Yeah,
so it's a harbor deposit. And so there's a really, really wide range of finds that we've been pulling up. The stratigraphy is a little complicated because it's a harbor deposit, but we found things stretching really far back into history. And I'm not entirely sure how much I'm allowed to talk about as of right now. But I can say that the majority of the finds that we found have been late Roman Byzantine, so 4th, 5th, 6th century. Really, really interesting stuff.
So if someone wants to look more into this project, can they find it somewhere? Is it there's a website, or is it somewhere they can look for it?
Don't actually know. I think so. The university produces a report annually for the Superintendent's Cultural Heritage. I don't know if that report's publicly accessible. I do know there are a few papers that have been published about some of the proofing that we did, the survey work that was done, way before I was ever associated with the University of Malta. I think I was in middle school when they were doing the initial survey work. But so I do know that paper exists. I don't know what else can be found outside of its connection to the university. I'm sorry.
That's that's a pretty good answer, to be honest. So if someone is interested, they should look up the university website. So before we go more
Yeah, I'll
into
plug my university.
oh, of course,
Go give them
course.
money.
So you said before studying the masters in archaeology that you didn't have archaeological experience. You mean you didn't have field experience or something else? Or you do you have a bachelor's in archaeology? Do you have a bachelor's in something else?
No, actually, yeah, I had neither. Okay, that's not entirely true. Actually, so I volunteered on a project. I studied abroad in the UK. I went to the University of Aberdeen for a year. And I volunteered on a little project there, but it was really just like pottery washing, right? Like they were doing an excavation out in the front of the in like the university quad, right? And so that was it. I got my undergraduate in history and political science. So the history connected me pretty well with archaeology. But other than that, I attended one field school before the master's started in the Caribbean, and that was my only archaeological experience.
But that seems like a wide range of archaeological experience for the Caribbean to Scotland to Malta now. That's you have a wide image of archaeology. Really.
I would really like to de-emphasize the Aberdeen experience. I was barely there.
It's an experience,
especially
though.
now knowing. Yeah, of course. I mean, I loved it. It was raining the whole time, so that wasn't very fun. But that's just the UK for you, right?
Absolutely. I think there's a saying in the world of UK archaeology that is a muddy archaeology. It's archaeology in the mud, where excavation is pretty easy because mud is removed easily, whilst in like drier countries you have to really dig the soil in order to reach the finds. But
if it's muddy enough, it basically becomes underwater archaeology.
Right. So this is why you're here now. So, so what made you go into maritime stuff? Because to me, you have to be somehow related to maritime archaeology. And you are.
Well, so I think, I mean, there's a bunch of factors. I'll take all the listeners back to probably the worst time in everyone's life in recent memory. This is COVID, when I made the decision to do this. So yeah, sorry to do that to everyone, but I was, so during COVID, I was in law school actually. And while I was there, I did my first year, decided that wasn't for me. And then was looking for a way to have a career that I felt was both important, and also satisfied a bunch of like my own desires for what I saw going forward in my life. And one that I could easily access given my background. So, but I've been lucky enough because of a combination of family, vacations and everything. And I was in Boy Scouts for my entire childhood. I got my Eagle and all of that. I was lucky enough through all of that to be a diver since like 2012, since I was a little kid. Basically as young as you can dive is when I started. So I figured I had that. I had my historical background, and I just started poking around, and I found a professor out of California, Dr. Andrew Kinkella, who specializes in underwater archaeology and cenotes. He does Mayan stuff in the Yucatan Peninsula. Really fascinating dude. But I found his YouTube channel and reached out to him, and it just kind of like coalesced from there. I talked to a bunch of other professors and realized it was like a difficult career path, but doable if you really, really dedicate yourself to it.
That's true.
So that's kind of my story.
You do see yourself pursuing a career in archaeology right now. You don't like started thinking that maybe it's a bit difficult, it's hard. So you do see yourself pursuing a career in archaeology. That's what you want to do.
It is something I'd like to do. I do think, I mean, it is difficult. I'm about to finish my thesis. And so I'm looking at jobs, and I'm trying to find programs, and I do understand that it is difficult. And I do think that I'll probably have to make, career decisions that end up adjacent to the field and not necessarily in the field. But I don't actually have a problem with that. I've worn a lot of hats in my life, and I prefer it that way. And so if I end up in something like policy, which I am particularly interested in, I'm totally fine with that. And I do think that makes you, or at least it makes me, much more flexible in my approach to how I make money, the kind of impact I can have on the world and the field. Yeah.
True. Yeah. So you're finishing your thesis, you said. What was your thesis about?
Oh man. Currently it's about having anxiety. It's about having anxiety and losing sleep. So that's what it's about right now.
Are you sure you're writing an archaeological thesis?
Yeah. No, I'm just panicking. That's all it is.
Oh my God. No, don't panic. Don't panic. No. Tell me what is it about in a calm way. Don't think too much about it.
No, so it's actually the excavation we talked about before, Selena. Not a ton of post-excavation lab work has been done so far on the artifacts there. So part of my thesis is on that. We're working on looking at some of the diegetic changes within a bunch of Roman era ceramics. It's difficult to do largely because we're really restricted in access to a lot of more cutting edge technology, or even like widespread technology has like openings. Malta is a small country, and I think because as a consequence of being a small country, there's just a lot of pressure on the two institutions that have, for example, XRF. And so you have these like long wait lines. And so I'm trying to do what I can, given those restrictions. But yeah, I guess that didn't really answer your question. Sorry. So we excavated.
No. I mean, yeah. It kind of like you gave us an introduction to it. You're trying to work on Roman ceramics from the side.
Right. So there's a lot of the ceramics that we're recovering have some pretty heavy, what appears to be like chemical damage, right? Pretty severe degradation that we're seeing, which could be a result of mechanical issues, wave action, or anchoring, because this is a really popular anchorage site. But a lot of it is much more clearly not that. There's a lot of really deep discoloration, stuff like that. And so we're working on this really large assemblage of archaeological artifacts from that year, or from 2022, my apologies, and another set from a different location in Malta, a much older shipwreck, Roman shipwreck. And we're trying to see if this is a diegetic change that can be mapped across these two bays.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So are they ceramics? Are they mostly transport vessels, or is it anything and everything inside the harbor?
Yeah. So a lot of them are in really bad shape. They're almost unidentifiable, which makes this even harder. We do know that a lot of them are amphora, which is, obviously super common, right? So we do know that. We do know that we have some smaller pieces, more personal pieces. We've recovered multiple lamps, oil lamps, Roman oil lamps. So, and we've from Selena especially, we've pulled up a ton of wooden artifacts, bone, animal bones, stuff like that. But yeah, so there's a wide range of artifacts. I'm just working with the ceramics, and again, these are 4th, 5th century.
Yeah, so ideally 4th, 5th century BC, I imagine, or AD.
AD, sorry.
AD,
4th, 5th
AD.
century
okay,
AD.
Okay.
Yeah, late Roman Empire.
late Roman Empire. True. So your plan right now is to ideally put this through XRF, right? And do you want to explain to us what XRF is?
Well,
or what it does?
Yeah, well, so there's a bunch of different techniques that I think would work. XRF is one of them, but that's not one that I'm interested in. Like electromagnetics or the gas spectrometry, stuff like that. Those are not things that I'm actually going to do with my thesis, mostly because of the restriction at this moment. That's a proposal for future research. At right now, we're just trying to like literally see if there is a spatial relation with the degradation in the pottery and where it's found within the trench. So that's what I'm doing right now. A lot of that's hand specimen analysis. I've done a ton of microscope photos, lots of like mineral identification, but we're trying, because this is an exploratory topic, there's really not much written about it. We're trying to do it from a non-destructive path first. And then if I decide to continue through a PhD, potentially, maybe go much more intense. So that's where we're at right now. Yeah.
That sounds...
Sorry, I might have misled you a little bit at the beginning there.
No, that sounds extremely difficult and brave for a master's thesis. I mean, I would imagine someone saying... I would imagine someone telling me I'm doing my PhD thesis on this kind of like water degradation and spatial analysis between a shipwreck and harbor. And I would say, wow, that would take a lot of time. And it would be... I mean, I honestly have never read something about this topic. I've never come across it.
Right.
So I'd imagine it's pretty unique.
It is really niche, and it's surprising actually. So even in my literature review, I've only found a handful of papers that directly address this kind of like underwater chemical diagenesis. There was a special publication in 2022 of the journal Minerals that there was 2 papers in there. And then another person's master's thesis from Israel in 2017. Outside of that, I mean, I found some scattering of stuff. A lot of talk about like bioerosion, which is a different process, but that is also still relevant to this. But it is a relatively niche topic, at least right now, and at least from my research. Maybe there's like... Well, and there are, I need to shout out a couple papers from China that have been really, really useful. But most of those are freshwater, if I remember correctly, river boats that they were finding. So it's a little bit different from a super saline environment like the Mediterranean.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's actually... So what's a serious question, but what's the depth of the harbor and the shipwreck? Because I'd imagine that gives restrictions when it comes to how much time you can spend there.
Yeah, well, we're lucky. So the 2 sites we're working on, Salina, and the other site is the Mortar Bay wreck in Malia Bay. It's further north in the country, but again, Malta's small, so it's only, I think, 15 minutes away, 30 minutes away drive. Very, very shallow. These are like well within easily operable depth. I think Salina is, less than 5 meters, and Malia's, the Mortar Bay wreck's even less than that. The Mortar Bay wreck is a very unique location, though, because it is covered in one of the largest Posidonia mats, Posidonia oceanica, the seagrass, I have ever seen. It is huge. It's like being in a meadow in the mountains. It's just, you get down there and it's just seagrass as far as the eye can see.
Oh my God. And imagine the Posidonia in the Mediterranean is protected species, right?
It is, yeah.
It is. So you can't really touch it. You can't remove it and replant it or do anything with it. So,
well, yeah. I know that they tried to, I think it was in Cyprus. I think you're probably familiar with this, because they tried to relocate some Posidonia a few years back.
Yeah, you're right. I'm aware of they tried. I'm not sure if they succeeded.
Yeah, I don't know.
I haven't followed up with it, but I was at an excavation recently, and we had specific orders to not touch the Posidonia. So the ship was halfway under the Posidonia field, meadows rather, as you said, big meadows. And so we could really only excavate half the ship. And when we reached the Posidonia, we would stop and be like, oh, well, that's it. We can't go any further. Which is, it's kind of annoying, but at the same time, as we want other people to respect antiquities, we should be respectful towards other people's specialties and sciences. Like the marine biologists were very, very strict about their Posidonia meadows. But yeah, that's amazing.
Posidonia is it's a super critical environment. So it's like Europe's largest carbon sink.
Really?
Yeah, it's huge.
Oh wow!
So it's Europe's largest carbon sink. It is an extremely important habitat for a bunch of endangered species. It's also got a ton of unique bacterial life. It hosts cyanobacteria. They just discovered this, and that can be used for cancer treatment. It's an extremely
really?
And it protects. I mean, obviously, that's like an extremely experimental. Cyanobacteria we know is used for cancer treatment. Whether or not it can be harvested from Posidonia meadows, I think, is up for debate. They just discovered it exists there, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that. This is not my field.
But it's amazing you know that. I had no idea that was going on.
Posidonia is a large part of my thesis because it's present at both sites. So, it is a really, really critical ecosystem, and we're losing it rapidly. Since the 1980s or 1970s, we've lost almost 30%. Climate change.
Climate change, of course. Oh,
Posidonia is, exactly. Yeah. Posidonia is an extremely sensitive little plant. So changes in salinity and changes in temperature really affect its ability to grow, and it grows extremely slowly. I really could be wrong. I think it's like less than a centimeter a decade. It's not replaceable in human lifespan, regardless of what the number actually is. And so the Posidonia mat, which it grows in these like big giant spongy dirt clods, basically, that it builds up on top of itself over a long period of time. The one at the Mortar Bay wreck in Malta is at least 900 years old.
What? 900 years old? I would never think of that. Oh man, I feel so bad now when I go to the beach and I touch the Posidonia. I feel like terrible.
Oh, you can touch it. It's fine. You can touch it.
I might have touched a 500-year-old seagrass. Right. Wow.
So, well, the leaves are not that old, but the mat itself, the actual like superstructure of the plant, is that old. And some of them are way older. I think there's one in Spain. I don't want to be giving a bunch of false information, but they can get significantly older than that. It is a really cool organism, but it is, like I said, it is dying. And I think that's actually a serious problem for archaeology. There's the existential threat of losing a massive ecosystem like that, right? There's like all of the biological. I don't want to like say that that's not a problem. But this is an archaeology podcast. So
of course.
Right. So there is like an archaeological threat too, I think, because the mats that are created, the way it packs sediments in, creates an anoxic environment that protects artifacts to a really surprisingly good degree, at least in living mats. There's an excavation in Turkey at a place called Liman Tepe, where they were able to pull out I think it's called the beak. I could be wrong. The part of the anchor those old archaic anchors that actually like hooks into the sediment. And
yes,
and
they not the classical anchor that we think about. It's the different kind of anchors.
Right, it's different shapes.
Widely published. I mean, someone can Google it and find archaic anchors, how they look like.
Yeah, and they can find this paper too. I don't remember the name of the author, but I can pull it up if you'd like. But they found it's a wooden anchor, and they found the complete a complete section of it preserved within the Posidonia, along with like I think a perfume jar that still had paint on it. A lot of really so it protects, like Posidonia will protect exactly artifacts from mechanical and biological and chemical damage. And so if we're losing it at, I think, a rate of, it was 30%. We've lost 30% of Posidonia coverage since the 70s in the Mediterranean. Yeah, it's extremely concerning.
Wow. I mean, yeah, M.A.R.E is a very impressive prehistoric site on land, but also a very impressive harbor, submerged harbor. And I think there is an article, not an academic article, but like a news article that came out fairly recently, 2025, very recently, that talked about the little
last
jar.
30 days.
Yeah. The little jar you talked about with the paint preserved on it. I think it was on the news recently. So I think people can definitely Google M.A.R.E and search it up. It's out there somewhere. So
yeah, I think Alexander the Great built a causeway there, if I'm remembering correctly.
Did he now? Okay.
I think that's the origin of that site.
Oh wow. Oh well, that's super impressive. I know that excavations in M.A.R.E have been going on years and years and years, and they have found some amazing finds. I think there was a city wall somewhere, and then there was this prehistoric site, and then there was the harbor. Yeah, amazing work has been done every year in let me think about July. I think every year in July there is an excavation season in M.A.R.E. But anyway, yeah, let's remove ourselves from M.A.R.E for a minute. So you talked a lot and said very interesting stuff about the Mediterranean. And you're from the USA, right?
I am, yeah.
So
from New Mexico.
From New Mexico. Okay, that's specific. Very nice. So how did you come to have such interest in the Mediterranean? When did that start?
Well, I mean, my family is all Greek. Most of my extended family lives there. So there's that. Hence the Nikos, right?
Yeah, the not very English name, Nikos.
No, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, there is that. I mean, I don't know. How many archaeologists grew up watching The Mummy or whatever, and that's like their introduction to archaeology? I'm sure that was me. I know for a fact that was me. I love that movie. And so I think that like the Mediterranean is, for better or for worse, kind of the locus of a huge amount of archaeological study in the world. And even in the United States, if you want to pursue a graduate degree in archaeology, first off, it's a graduate degree in anthropology here, and you focus in archaeology for reasons I don't really understand. That's not like universally true, but that is the majority of the way the United States works. But if you want to pursue that, the majority of those programs are focused in classical archaeology in the Mediterranean. Rome, Greece, Egypt. And I think maybe it's a function of just the amount of material that there is for those civilizations. But I also think that there's just, there's a trend of centering certain civilizations, certain cultures over others. And Rome, maybe more than anyone else, gets that. So I think that even if you don't want to study classical archaeology, it's difficult to not end up in that field to some degree. New Mexico is different because New Mexico has Chaco Canyon, which is an incredible site. I've been there a bunch. The like Chacoan people, the Puebloan people, they've been here for a very long time. And there's a bunch of their archaeological sites here. I mean, the like groundbreaking thin section analysis, like the first time that was done, I think was done here in New Mexico. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that answers your question.
No, it completely answered my question. That was so interesting. I even forgot my question. I have a new one because you mentioned something that I think is crucial for archaeology nowadays. And I think it's not talked about enough because we don't think it's important or cool or academic enough. And that's the influence that pop culture has on people's choices and how they treat archaeology and how they treat antiquities. I mean, you mentioned the mummy. I believe that now that you're finishing a graduate degree in archaeology, you you have an idea of how realistic the mummy is, right? I mean,
Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've definitely gotten into a couple shotgun fights in the last few years.
So I think it's worth in an archaeology podcast talking about pop culture and talking about how movies influence how the people. So, and this, I'm gonna say something that I didn't do. A friend of mine did in a class that I took for my master's last year, where she asked ChatGPT, right? She asked ChatGPT, can you generate pictures of archaeologists? And it was 5 pictures of old men, white beards. Everyone was in Egypt. Everyone was wearing a brown hat. I was all of it. So I don't know. I don't know how you feel like, but I feel like archaeologists are some of the most misrepresented people out there.
It's
and I
up
think
there.
people have
It's up there.
a wild opinions about what we do.
Yeah. I mean, look. I love Indiana Jones as much as anyone. I think they're great movies. The new video game, I've been playing that. It's awesome, and there is some like genuine archaeology in that. That's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, of course, nobody wants to watch a movie about somebody knee deep in a trench for 8 hours having back problems. Like, that's not a fun movie. Although there is that movie. I haven't seen it. Was it The Dig on Netflix from a few years ago?
I've seen it. Yeah.
Is that
I've
Sutton
seen
Who?
that
I
is
don't know how
Sutton Who,
accurate
yeah.
it is.
Me neither. To be honest, I've seen the movie, but I think I remember commenting on how little archaeology there was, because Saturn Who was found on a mound, right?
Right.
And I think one scene was him at the top of the mound, and then the plot of the movie, because it was filmed, it was Saturn Who was found during World War II and the air raids that were happening in the UK, and then it was him at the top of the mound, and then planes, fear, tea party, tea evening, and then half the mound was gone. So
okay.
there was
skipped
this,
all the work.
yeah,
all the labor.
skipped the part of actually digging the mound and reaching the Saturn Who ship. It's a fun movie. I don't remember. I only saw it once when it was out. But
yeah,
but I think yeah, it's there's no shotgun fights, even though there are planes and dropping bombs.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's somehow realistic, I would say.
Okay. And I think I think that there's 2 realities. First off, to what you said about archaeology being one of the most misrepresented fields. I mean, there's the pop culture. I mean, I don't know. Brendan Fraser's character in The Mummy isn't an archaeologist. He's just a grave robber. But Indiana Jones, Laura Croft are technically, they have PhDs or whatever in archaeology, and it's not what the field is like at all. But then there's the other side of things where it gets misrepresented from like a conspiracy theory, like a misinformation angle, and that one is, I think, even more damaging. If people, I don't know, because I think at the very least, stuff like Indiana Jones gets people interested in the field, and then they might actually pursue a career in archaeology, right? I think that's happened to a lot of people in the field. But the other side, the other angle, I mean, I don't know about you, but there's not a single time, I don't think I go 1 month without telling somebody what I study and someone seriously asking me if I found Atlantis.
Oh my God. I was so expecting this to come. And yes, of course, like I'm laughing now because it's true that whenever you meet someone and you tell, what do you do? I do maritime archaeology. What is this? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, have you found Atlantis yet? And then I'm like, okay.
And some people are joking, and it's a fun joke, and it's fine. But some people are not joking. And I don't know. I talking to people at bars or in an Uber or on the bus or whatever, somebody inevitably brings up the pyramids being built by aliens or Machu Picchu being built by aliens or so I do think that that misrepresentation cuts both ways quite a bit, and I think one is really, really, really damaging to our collective understanding of the truth about things.
Absolutely. And as you said, sometimes archaeology can be very, very boring, right? And that
I don't think I said that, but sure, I agree with you.
True. Whatever, I said that. It's true. Sometimes archaeology can be very boring. I mean, opening up an excavation report, like, I don't even do that. I dread the day that I will open up an excavation report and I'm like, oh my God, all those numbers and all that data, Jesus. So I get that it ruins kind of the mystery for some people. And I get that it's very much easier to be attracted to the story where aliens came down and built the pyramids rather than, they pulled the stones, they lifted them using machinery that they had, and it can be proven. It's much less exciting for some people. For me, it's absolutely brilliant that, for example, in Egypt, they could have the machinery to lift tonnage of worth of like stones. But for some people, this is absolutely boring.
Well, and I think that like it's disconcerting, and I don't know, it's a little sad to me because you're taking away huge achievements of people, and applying it to a supernatural force, which just, I don't know, it's not very like proud of humanity or whatever of you to say something like that.
Absolutely. But I completely agree with what you just said. It's like, why would you why would you speak less of our achievements and just say that it was someone else? It was an alien that did it. No, it was humans. Yeah. They were smart.
We just discovered that they dragged some of the Stonehenge stones like all the way from Scotland, right? Like, that's insane.
Yes.
That is a crazy thing for people, I don't know how many thousands of years ago, to do that. Sorry,
I don't remember. I don't remember either.
It was a long time ago.
But I mean, I'm sure people can Google Stonehenge and figure out what it was.
Right. I just don't want to be talking about misinformation and then be a spreader of it myself, which I think I've probably done already once this podcast. So.
Oh no, I mean, it's one thing to spread misinformation and another thing to say I'm not really sure of the date. It must have been somewhere there.
Fair
enough. You can check it out yourself. I mean, misinformation will be you come here and be like, yeah, Stonehenge, aliens, 100%.
That's true.
That
controversial take. The Roman aqueducts were aliens. Actually, that's my belief.
Whoa! Why would you say that? Why
no, I'm joking.
Why aqueducts?
Because no one ever says that. No one ever says that. The aqueducts are super. They're super. It's incredible that they were able to build them. I acknowledge it was done largely with slave labor, so everything's easier when you have slaves. But the fact that they were able to build them with such a degree of mathematical accuracy is incredible. But nobody ever says that aliens built the aqueducts. So
that's
they're
not
my
as
fun
interesting,
one-up.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, right. Yeah, there's actually a study, a psychological study, where researchers created a fake conspiracy theory and told people 81% of the population of the country believes that that conspiracy theory is true. And on that case, most of the people would not believe that the conspiracy was true. But when they said another conspiracy, I'm saying a lot of words, I will get to a point eventually.
No,
when they gave them another conspiracy and they said that 20% of the population believes in this, they tend to believe it more because it proved that people tend to believe the conspiracy theory that is more distant from what the majority thinks is true. Basically, it proved somehow that if most people believe it, then people tend not to believe it because most people do. I think it's a weird way of seeing things, and it creates kind of this question of like, how did we end up here where we believe what less people believe rather than what most people believe?
So I do think that goes to kind of a core truth of the way people find themselves drawn to conspiratorial thinking. And that is that having the feeling that you have an answer to something about the world that other people don't have, is, I think, a feeling that a lot of people like. They like that feeling. People like to know stuff. It's why trivia games. I do think that that also is one of those driving aspects of conspiratorial thinking, that like, I know I have the answers to the universe, and like me and my little in-group do. And either someone else is trying to repress it, or other people are too stupid to grasp that. And I do think that that happens a lot. I don't know if that happens with archaeological conspiracy theories, because it's all over History Channel or whatever. You get 40 seasons of Ancient Aliens. But
Yeah.
I do think that is one of those initial draws, is that feeling.
Yeah,
of,
Ancient Aliens, Ancient Apocalypse is the other one.
Ancient Apocalypse.
Which we're talking about. Yeah, talking about like talking about Atlantis. Isn't on Ancient Apocalypse that he's desperately trying to find where Atlantis is.
Yeah, I think,
and he's dead serious about it.
Graham Hancock, as far as I know, is under he believes that there's some global, or there was some like global massive civilization that spanned like the entire globe at one point, and we've like fallen from that. It's very Tower of Babel. But I don't think that, first off, there's any evidence for it, and I'm not entirely sure. I know he was in Malta. I think he had something to do with the cart ruts there. I haven't actually watched Ancient Apocalypse, but I have read The Sign and the Seal, which is a book he wrote in like the 80s about the Ark of the Covenant.
So this, and I think the Ancient Apocalypse is on Netflix, right? So
it is on Netflix,
and
yeah.
I think and Ancient Aliens is on History Channel and National Geographic. I don't remember.
No, it's
but
History Channel.
It's History Channel. So
yeah, I think Nat Geo has a little bit more self-respect than that. But
you can see how media like reproduces that kind of stuff, because
absolutely,
they don't really care about what the truth is or what is like proven, or what they care about numbers, of course, and they would reproduce that daily. And even if you have a critical mind and you're thinking critically, I think if you're spoon-fed all this false information day on, day out, you eventually fall for it, right?
Yeah. Well, and the worst is not Ancient Aliens. It's not Ancient Apocalypse. It is just the absolute deluge of nonsense on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. It is inescapable there. I mean, I follow a bunch of archaeological accounts, and I still get just bombarded with insane stuff. So, and I think that, at least with TV, the episode ends and you can move on with your life. With Netflix, you're done with Ancient Apocalypse. You can go on, and yes, it's damaging because there's a huge amount of importance that is given to it just by the fact that it's on Netflix. But I think if you are trapped in your doom scroll on TikTok for 5 hours and all you're getting is stuff about stargates and the pyramids being portals to other dimensions or whatever, it's going to completely fry your brain.
Oh yeah. And that you mentioned something super important: social media. Oh my God, because what essentially TikTok is that it says, I will serve you as much information as I can in the shortest time span that I can. So it's the complete opposite of what we should be doing when we're like working on a project, any science really.
Right. Well, and I do think it's our duty. I mean, I run the M.A.R.E social, or the Instagram account, right? Although I do
let's plug it in.
Yeah.
Wait, whoop.
Yeah, we'll plug it,
you can
exactly.
follow M.A.R.E on Instagram. Nice.
Right.
Yep.
We have a impressive total of 2 posts. I need to get a little bit better about that. But yeah, so I think that it's our duty to utilize this tool to the best of our abilities. But I also understand that, it's very difficult to adequately explain a science over a relatively short soundbite like that. It takes like real serious science communication skills. Especially with something like archaeology, where you're like, well, we think it's this because we think this pod is this old because of all these like different factors, but we're not entirely sure. Those aren't answers people like receiving. It's our duty there to do our best with the tools that we have to convey this information. But I also understand that a large portion of the population doesn't want to hear a bunch of, well, we don't know yet answers.
Sure. And the truth is that in archaeology, 95% of what we do is that I am not sure, this is my best guess. So do what you want with it.
And that's our job as scientists. That's all scientists' job, right? Is to give answers like that, because we don't know. And when you don't know, you have to say that. But all those little gaps are where people you fill in with whatever they want to believe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's the way that we work in archaeology, especially, is that we most of the times try to recreate a picture of the past, right? Using material evidence. So we have this material evidence. What does it tell us about the past? And we tend to use the scenario that is most likely to happen, even if an outrageous scenario might still be possible, but it's outrageous. Like, for example, if you're at home right now and you said, I'm going to work, I would imagine that you go to work by car, bike, bus, something like that. Theoretically, it would be possible if you go by helicopter, but you wouldn't do that, right?
I'd have to be really loaded. Yeah, I'm exceedingly well.
Unless you're this outrageous individual that could go to work using a helicopter. So It's the same with archaeology. If you have the pyramids or any small and big find, because archaeology is not about only the pyramids and the Parthenon and the Stonehenge and the big things. It's mostly about small, tiny things, as you said, very fragmented, deteriorated pieces of amphora that will help us understand the whole site. So when archaeology, it's about the most possible scenario and not the most outrageous scenario. It's not a clickbait. Well, social media and the media basically is nowadays based on who can make the juiciest article about the best clickbait article.
Right. And, it really is, it's a really unfortunate position to be in, because obviously, journalism is crucial to a healthy society, but you have, especially maybe less so in the sciences than in other fields. But I do think that there's this propensity to report on, first off, to report on sites that are more interesting than others, even though these sites are like of equal importance. I don't think that you're going to read about people finding napped arrowheads in northern New Mexico in the New York Times. You will read about those footprints in white sands. Those are really interesting. But there's what I'm trying to say is that there is like a predilection, you're right, to that kind of sensationalist reporting that also creates a space for people to fill in the gaps with aliens or demons or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's so many things that we should think about, and so much information that we should filter out before and after reading, seeing, listening to anything. Really, even if in this podcast we said many times, you said actually many times, I don't know if this is true, go check this out, or this is maybe the truth. So we need to be able to filter information. But anyway, saying that, I wanted to ask you a bit about like your future. You said you wanted to go into policy making, and you mean like heritage protection and preservation. What are you thinking about? Where do you want to go? Because you said you wanted to make it change the world, I think, right? That's what you said.
Well, doesn't everyone?
I don't know. Does it?
So I think, first off, apologies to the listeners, my headphones died, so you might hear like a change of the quality of audio, but that's the consequence of not charging my headphones in advance. So I think that ideally, if I got to continue to do research, if I get a PhD, which is something I would like to, I would like to focus on the Arctic. It's a natural extension of the climate change associated work I've been doing so far. And I don't think that there's like anywhere in the world where archaeological sites are more threatened by climate change than somewhere like a maritime Arctic environment. We're seeing a lot of like ice melt, um, and like salinity changes and all of these things, that I would really like to research, and that's kind of where I would like to take my research further in the future.
That's a whole new world. So what kind of sites are in there in the Arctic? What kind of maritime sites are there?
Well, so the stuff I'm most familiar with is the island of Svalbard, which is a Norwegian island. I think there's some political weirdness with it. I think Russia also gets to claim some territory there. It's either within the city or something about governing the population. I'm not entirely sure, but I do believe that the majority of the island is Norwegian. And it was used as a whaling outpost in the early days of like mass European whaling. And because of that, there are whaling graves, production facilities, and sunken whaling shipwrecks that are on the island. There's also, I think, older Russian hunting sites. Russian is I think, anachronistic word to use, but there are hunting sites on the island. So there's that. And then there's stuff in Alaska that's like the native population there. Many sites there. I know some people who have done work in Alaska. And I think that work extends into Canada as well, although I'm not entirely sure. But so that's what I would like to do. And that's where I would like to take my research.
That's superbly interesting. Do you think of any specific institution up north or something like that? Do you have any in mind?
Norway has a university that I think is specifically tailored towards Arctic research. I know there is a robotics researcher who taught a course at the University of Malta about his research in Svalbard. Øyvind Odegaard, I think is how you pronounce his name. Really fascinating stuff. He's the one who initially like introduced me to that work. So possibly Norway. I know some research in the United States is being done on that, but like I said earlier, the vast majority of research is tailored towards the Mediterranean, I think, in most institutions in Europe and North America. And so there is, I think, some difficulty there, but there's also a lot of opportunity to grow the field if you can make it in. Oh, also Iceland. I know Iceland and I think possibly Denmark, although I know Denmark doesn't have a Maritime Archaeology program anymore. But
yeah, they closed it down recently.
Yeah.
Oh, unfortunate.
It is
unfortunate. And I think it was quite good. I think they did a lot of commercial diving.
It was good. I don't know what happened with that. When I was looking at universities to go to, that was on my list until I realized it had shuttered its doors. But
oh yeah, it's there's a lots. I think not lots with an exaggeration, but I've heard of archaeology departments closing down throughout the world. I mean, Sheffield Archaeology closed down fairly recently, and then it was now Denmark. So I don't know. It's kind of, it worries me deep inside. I'm like, okay, is the discipline of archaeology closing down? What is happening?
And that is something I'm worried about. Well, especially in the United States, given, and we don't have to talk about this for very long, but just the past week.
Oh, we can talk about this as long as you want.
Well, just the past week, there's been massive cuts to federal spending on stuff like this, specifically on institutions like NOAA. And it's a pause at the moment, but it's a pause to the tune of nearly $3 trillion. I know the National Institute of Science has stopped meeting to give out new grants. The National Institute of Health has stopped meeting to give out new grants. It is devastating to research funding in the United States right now, and it's absolutely going to affect universities. Whether or not it goes forward is, I think, a different subject. I know a judge has blocked the executive order, at least until next week, but it is a lot of money. And universities are already...
Hold up. So now, as of now, which is right now, the episode is recorded January 2025.
Right.
You're
January
telling me
29th.
that almost $1 trillion are cut from sciences and spending on research grants in the US.
The federal government has put, Donald Trump has put a freeze on all federal funding. That was blocked by the courts, but he specifically mentioned in the order environmental justice programs, and has specifically told institutions like the CDC and the NIH that they're not able to dole out their grants, at least for now. There's also a federal hiring freeze. So a lot of maritime archaeologists in the United States work for the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, right, NOAA. For the next 90 days, I don't think they're going to be able to hire any new employees. I don't know if that affects their internship programs. I hope not, because I'm applying. But right, thank you. So there is worry there, and obviously universities in the United States are reliant on that federal funding to be able to do their research. And universities in the United States are already kind of cutting back on humanities. And I know archaeology sits in this weird space where it straddles the humanities and the sciences. I feel like the recent closures of certain archaeology departments hopefully isn't, but it could be a sign of things to come. Maybe in the United States, I don't know. I mean, this is all just speculation, but it is concerning. I agree with you.
Yeah, it's devastating. I didn't know about that, to be honest with you, and it's because on the one hand, if it cuts down on spending on like humanities, that means that researchers still exist, still will try to get grants to the research, but that means that archaeology will be gravitated towards the sciences, or vice versa, or neither of the two, which will be the worst. And on the other hand, it's I believe that because I'm an archaeologist, of course, but I believe that archaeology and history are absolutely crucial tools when it comes to a nation, a country that it depends on having a united identity, which they cannot rely on. And I think this is heavily reliant on history and archaeology. That's what, when we talk about our common identity, we say, yeah, because our ancestors did that. We all share kind of the same background and ancestors. I think that's so. When we cut spending from the humanities, and I think that's not only about archaeology, right? Humanities are like, if we go into the humanities, we'll be here for another 3 hours and talk about how being humane comes from humanities, how being exposed to other humans of the past makes us more humans, and all that wonderful stuff that is written about the humanities and how useful they are, how necessary they are. In an ever-changing world where social media is everywhere and people stop reading books and people stop reading everything in general and have an attention span of 10 seconds, cutting on humanities, I think it's bad. It's terrible.
I agree. And I think that's also just that kind of way of thinking that you learn doing like a history degree or an English degree or something like that is important just to take into the world generally. regardless of what you end up doing professionally, even if you like go into finance or whatever, the understanding of this is the way we think about history, this is the way we research it, and this is the way we have to be both like critical of the stories we tell about ourselves, and the stories we tell about our societies, is, I think, really important, and also helps combat the conspiratorial thinking we were talking about earlier. And so, yeah, I mean, it is concerning, and that does kind of go into the desire to go into the policy angle of it, which you also brought up. So yeah, I don't want to be too overly grim, because I don't think that necessarily helps anything. I don't want to be a doomer about the way about path forward, but yeah, I will admit I am concerned, for sure.
Well, there's so many, there's like not that many things you can do about it, right? It's like sometimes you can just accept the reality and try to change it step by step. And it's the small steps and living the world better than how we found it that matters, I think, because if $1 trillion are cut from spending in the humanities, you can bring that back in a matter of days, maybe in a matter of months or years, I don't know. But the important thing is that people still care about the humanities, even though the circumstances are difficult and money is crucial. And if there's no money, there's really not that much research. People need food, people need money. But it's good, and I want to close here, that it's good that people still care, even though it looks kind of grim sometimes. And even though we get asked about Atlantis about twice a week, people still care. And I mean, personally, I don't know how many times you've did it, but I've had the Atlantis conversation countless times. And I'm happy every time to be like, you know what? This person believed that Atlantis existed before they met me. Now they don't.
Right, that's part of it.
And it's a small change I can bring to the world, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much. Do you have any closing remarks before we go?
Yeah, follow the MARE Instagram account. I'll be posting more on there in the next coming days. Come to our lectures. George is presenting next week. I don't know when this is probably not gonna come out before.
I mean, this is gonna come out after I present it, but I hope they will be able to see my lecture online, uploaded on the MARE website, where we upload all the lectures. All the online lectures are recorded and uploaded when of course the researchers allow it. If the research is under publication or stuff like that, we don't, obviously. But I mean, I'm sure hopefully they can check it out in the MARE website. But I'm sure that whenever this comes out, there will be a lecture coming.
There will
check out the next lecture.
Inevitably be a lecture. That's our job.
Yeah. That's absolutely.
Yeah, follow our YouTube account now that George set up.
Yes.
Where I think these episodes will be posted.
Yep. These episodes are posted absolutely everywhere. You can find it on YouTube, Patreon, Podcastle, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. This is everywhere.
Excellent. There we go. So I think I've plugged everything I can think of now.
Amazing job.
Go dig up something cool. I don't know. That's all I can think of to say.
No, you've been great. I mean, I've loved nerding about Posidonia. I love nerding about movies and about social media, and I loved your take that aliens built Roman aqueducts.
Right.
So this has been
that's the hill I'm going to die on now. I'm going to build my entire career off the alien aqueduct thing.
I hope you'll be able to send this episode to future like employers or supervisors, so they can listen about your views of the world. This was amazing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good day. See you next time.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye.